Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. My wife and I have recently moved into a new city that contains most of the things we worked to get our entire lives. It checked all of our bucket list boxes. It was a medial point between our parents' home. It had really low crime rates and was known for its family, child-friendly environment, plenty of parks and good quality schools, and just about everything we could need in preparation to expand our little family. To put it simply, it was a perfect mutual dream destination for the two of us. Before we moved into our new destination, we obviously made sure to check that our diplomas and certificates would land us jobs in positions similar to the ones we had in our old city. So in a sense, our application process for our new jobs took place before we actually moved into our new home. In the first couple of months, everything seemed to be going rather smoothly. We were getting accustomed to the new atmosphere. We were making new friends and our neighbors were very kind and familial, and everything seemed to be floating in the right direction. The transition was smooth and effortless, and things signaled that we were destined to live there forever. Until one day, my wife came up to me and confessed to me something that derailed the course of our plans and made us change destinations once again. It was related to change of attitude that I had noticed about her in the past few weeks, as the passive, careful, and selective person she once was had turned into a hateful, untrusting, somewhat toxic person, and I couldn't quite understand what the cause of that change might have been, as it was very abrupt and not a result of anything I did. When she told me what happened, I was enraged and infuriated in a way that made me act out and behave on it immediately. Apparently, once she had taken the new position at the new firm, she got into it quite easily. At the time, she assumed it was a divine sign telling her that this was the right destination. But that was quickly to change when she came into the office and started working in direct contact with her boss. This new boss of hers was known amongst the women to be a groomer. It was something one of her lady co-workers told her about, and something my wife had gotten from the bitter experience of suffering it firsthand. He was constantly looming over the ladies mended their desks and insinuating that women would always have ways of increasing their salaries and bettering their positions and securing them at the company if they only knew how to use their natural God-given privileges. Always saying that men are creatures of action and women are those of thought, for which reason they should think about the smart ways to get further in life and secure incomes or good lifestyles. He would never explicitly say that further improvements in their career would take place if they were to give him sexual favors or appeal to his narcissism fantasy. But it was always obvious in his tone of speech and the way he looked at them and watched them as they work. My wife wasn't the first woman he subjected to his sickened desires, as he was far too comfortable doing it and knew he wouldn't get caught. He's the boss of himself and everyone around him after all. He had the ability to destroy anyone that accused him or stood up for themselves, and he was taking advantage of his position. He never actually laid hands on anyone, nor did he make any direct jokes or comments that insinuated anything sexual, which in my opinion is just another tactic he put in place to make sure he's never caught and no solid allegations are placed forth against him. That doesn't mean that he wasn't ruining the quality of the poor women that worked for him. The atmosphere around the workplace was everything aside from comfortable or secure or professional, to say the least. His actions and constant insinuation to verbally or possibly even physically cheat on the spouses and give in to the natural ways of advancement is an agenda this boss was very familiar with and had built just the right subtle way of insinuating it and forcing it down the firm women's throats. Only my wife and I's relationship is as close as it could be to perfection. And so when these pressures were being applied to her, they were really taking a toll on her and influencing the way she behaved. Instead of seducing her or allowing her to speak up, that mental toll was altering her behavior first in her workplace, sadly extended into the way she behaved around our home. The way she treated me, and simply put, had turned her into a very hateful person. She refused to be alone in the company of any male aside from me, or address the men in our friend groups and even family in hateful, disrespectful, and flat-out discriminatory tone, which she explained away by childhood traumas or simple dislikes, even though it wasn't something she expressed before we moved into the new city. What was so surprising about everything is that it contradicted the person that I knew my wife to be. And when she changed her demeanor, I questioned her for a little bit, but then moved on because I knew that my wife would always make the right and communicate with me if she finds it necessary. That's why when she informed me of what was going on, I felt enraged and infuriated. I left her alone at the house that day and rushed my way into her boss's office and informed him that my wife would officially be quitting her position at his firm and that I would be coming back the next morning expecting a letter of recommendation that was so marvelous. And that represented my wife's impressive skill sets and values, which would allow her any position she could request out of the city, because we were indeed moving out as soon as possible. Of course, our move was a result of his predatory, perverted actions, for which I made sure to call him out and condemn her to ease the process of dealing with those consequences. That event happened 2 weeks ago, and my wife and I moved out of that city and into a new one that was remote to it. Our new home isn't really adhering to fantasies and dream destinations that we had thought we achieved last time, but we're working towards it and we're trying our best to cope with things and find the best solution. I honestly don't know what actually happened in my wife's office that made her change so radically. I don't even know if she's telling me the whole truth or hiding some of it because she was so scared or ashamed, and I'm very glad I didn't get the time to think about the possibility that something grave was done to my wife by that pervert. Because had I gotten there with my thinking before barging into his office, I would have probably beat the living daylights out of him that day and gotten myself arrested as well as cost my wife her job. Not the a-hole. Obviously, this person should be reported, which is something I hope you did. And if you didn't do it just yet, don't let any more women suffer from working for a perverted man that takes their intellect for granted and opens up good work positions for them, then crushes their mental health with his abuse and manipulation. What a terrible person, honestly. Not the a-hole. You mentioned that the boss never touched the women or made any directly sexual or inappropriate jokes, but I don't think that's necessary when his tone of speech and way of looking and insinuating things is that obvious. It clearly was, or else your wife wouldn't have suffered such distress. It's so frustrating to feel powerless when being harassed by a figure of authority and a person that may have your monetary income at the tip of his finger. I think you should investigate things with your wife and check up on her mental health, and maybe eventually she'll tell you the whole truth. Because I'm not very convinced, and I genuinely think you should contact the police or report him to the available services. Not the a-hole. Good job for not beating him up. I don't think I need further proof than my wife being in distress enough to stop trusting the men in my family or friend groups. I would have walked into his office and put him out of duty for at least a couple of days. Nevertheless, you made the right decision to keep your wife away and secure her position in the heat of the moment instead of acting out of emotions and instincts. I wish you all the best and luck with your future attempts at building your dream home. Next story. I, 26 female, and my boyfriend, 25 male, have been together for about 1.5 years and do currently live together. Shortly after our anniversary, we found out we were expecting a baby boy to join us early February next year. I personally have never been a huge fan of children and used to have a hard time imagining it as a reality, but I did know that I would want one eventually of my own. So it took me a while to get excited and want to do a baby shower gender reveal. I did finally decide on having one, and my boyfriend and I agreed to have it done together, baby shower and gender reveal, since our parents both live 2 hours away from us in different directions. However, another thing we agreed on was we would learn our baby's gender first and do the reveal for both families, so no set of grandparents were told first, to be fair. This is important. Ever since we told this, my mom has been nothing but overly excited and bombarding me with letters about pregnancy babies. She even asked if she could come to my first sonogram, and ladies, we know how the first one is. This is her first grandchild, so I understood, but it was still a lot. We visited his parents back early August and mentioned our plan for a baby shower and gender reveal and that I wanted to do it in October. His mom immediately volunteered to set everything up. I agreed as far as the baby shower since she loved setting up parties and me and my parents were more introverted. But the issue came to light when I told her what me and my boyfriend agreed on. I waited for the men to walk away before approaching her again to tell her no for the gender reveal. She begged and even said, "Please, I promise I won't tell anyone." I sternly told her no again and thought it was settled. It wasn't. Sometime later, I come home after a girls' day out to my boyfriend telling me, hey, mom called and I let her know the gender, so everything should be okay for the baby shower. I was furious. I felt my stomach drop. My boyfriend explained that his mom called him earlier that day and said that she and I talked and that I said it was okay for her to know since she was planning everything. Needless to say, my boyfriend and I got into a big argument and he was defending his mom and that everything would be okay. He called me selfish and that it was his mom's first grandchild, so maybe she was just excited and forgot. I did reach out to his mom that evening by text, and yes, I was polite, though every part of me wanted to scream. I had confronted her by asking why she would do something like that after I had told her no multiple times. Her response was, sorry for the miscommunication, but I won't tell anyone. I asked a question on how it was a miscommunication when I was very clear. I took away her permission to plan the baby shower, which my boyfriend later stated was cruel of me, and just because she made a mistake, I shouldn't punish her. Punishment or consequence of crossing boundaries. Definitely not the a-hole. Shame on your boyfriend when you two had an agreement. Being excited doesn't give you the right to disrespect the mother of the child's wishes. She really couldn't wait just a little? People used to wait 9 months. At this point, I would do away with the whole gender reveal thing. Call your mother and let her know the gender and message all your friends. Tell your mother-in-law she ruined the surprise so there isn't a surprise anymore. If you haven't already, start agreeing on some hard boundaries with your partner regarding your mother-in-law and the birth early years. Something tells me this isn't going to be the first time you're steamrolled by her. Yeah, how can I say OP is cruel if she wants to know gender before the gender reveal baby shower? Why should they do something like this? She should have waited, but she acted like an a-hole. Not the a-hole original poster. She should have respected your decision. Mutual respect is the first step in a relationship. She proved that she is not trustworthy and your boyfriend sided with his mother. That's an a-hole move. Not the a-hole, and if you guys aren't married, don't. Obviously, you guys have to figure out if you're on the same page or not before having this kid, or else you're in for a life of complete misery, and this will not be the last time his mother does this. He should have talked to you first about revealing the gender to his mom, since he knew you guys already agreed on not revealing it to them. Of course he's going to defend his mother. He's a guy and he obviously doesn't see the issue with it, but he should be supporting you. I think you were right to take the party away from his mom. Though, to be honest, I hate the idea of gender reveals and I don't think the couple should be planning their own baby shower. But that's my own opinion. I think now the damage is done, you need to figure out how this relationship is going to work and what you need to feel comfortable and be able to trust your family. Next story. I, 27 female, am a fourth-year PhD student. I moved halfway across the country for my program. My family has a habit of making plans for all of us without asking me and expecting me to be able to make it. The way I see it, I have a flexible enough schedule to make it work. In general, I have a more flexible schedule than someone who works a 9 to 5, but I also do a ton of work, especially since I teach and am writing my dissertation. Even though I'm not clocked in, I work a set number of hours a day and don't like to deviate from my schedule just because I technically can. Some examples. A few years back, I was working a summer job and got a call from my grandparents to request a weekend off because they booked hotel rooms in the city. To be honest, they were lucky I was close enough to leave for the summer and could just put in my 2 weeks notice early to get that time off, because I wouldn't have otherwise. They acted like I was ridiculous for pointing this out. Another time, I was coming home from school for winter break and I mentioned that about 5 days after arriving, I'd be going into the city to help facilitate a theory reading group with a colleague. This was actually a really cool opportunity, and my mom got upset because apparently she invited half the family and some family friends for a big dinner that night without telling me. When I said I couldn't move the group and this was too good of an opportunity to pass up, she said I was putting my career ahead of family, even though I was going to be home for a full month, and this was the one night I made any outside plans. There are more examples, but I don't have the room to list more. What caused this argument is that my family booked a long weekend trip into the city with a million activities scheduled. This trip would take over half the time I have to grade my students' final papers, and I said in no uncertain terms that there was no way I'd be able to go on such a time-consuming trip and leave myself only 3 days to grade. My family says I should be willing to work double time for a few days in order to spend this time with them. They all sat me down and said they feel like they are in exile from my life because I always have something more important to do than spending time with them. I pointed out that I spent most of my breaks with them, call every week, and go home as much as I can, and that they can't make plans without consulting me and then get mad when I already have something going on. They think I'm trying to cut them out when I'm not. In fact, I intentionally limit the amount of time I spend with other people when I'm at home, so I can spend as much time with them as possible, even though there are friends I'd like to be seeing as well. They're incredibly upset with me, so I feel bad, and that maybe I could be more flexible with them. But I feel like I already do as much as I can. Am I the a-hole here? Not the a-hole. You're an adult, so you need to put your foot down. I took 6.5 years to finish my PhD, and I know how intensive, draining, and very demanding it is. The next time your family tries to guilt you, you tell each and every one of them, preferably sending a mass email or do it in person, that all of them are being very disrespectful and inconsiderate by constantly scheduling events without telling you ahead of time. Provide them with a calendar and ask them to notify you at least a month in advance. If not, then stick to your schedule and put your phone on silent. They're intentionally stressing you out and ignoring your obligations to your profession and work. Thanks. Yeah, it's definitely frustrating when they act like I have this endlessly flexible schedule, especially since it's so hard to explain that yes, if I wanted to, I could technically put off all of my responsibilities for a weekend, but that would put me in a really bad spot and create more stress. Absolutely not the a-hole. My in-laws do this all the time. It gets really frustrating. They will often make plans for us without actually telling us until the day of. It never works. We always tell them no. My husband has a zero tolerance policy for his family's crap, yet they still do it. They also have a habit of making plans when they know full well we're already busy. They just don't care. To be honest, it feels a bit manipulative to me. Like they think we're less likely to say no if they put us in that position. Your family needs to understand that you have a life beyond theirs and that you're not always going to be able to accommodate their plans. They still get to spend time with you despite how busy you are. The whole thing with expecting you to work double time so that you can be with them seems incredibly selfish. Would they make the same sacrifices for you? Because it seems as though you're the only one expected to.